Hi everybody, this is Leo Vallant with part one of my three-part series, The Virgin Mary and a Love Story. This is from a blog I wrote back in 2008. The love story content I found in the journals of a canonized saint, Anne Catherine Emmerich, 1774 to 1824. Some interesting stuff in there. So let's get started. First things first. No, don't worry about this being some kind of a sloppy personal devotional. Yes, there's the word love, but I assure you that everything will be contained and within historical context, and there will be no personal feelings on display to make anybody feel squirmy or uncomfortable. However, if my subscriber demographic has any overlap with the population that goes for romantic narrative fiction, well, they would not find this series entirely disappointing, though that particular content must wait for the third part. Until then, we need to work on context and backstory. But even before we can begin with that, we should find out why I started researching all this to begin with. And as with many things, it started with the angels. One sometimes needs to wonder what exactly is the purview of a guardian angel. Most practically, they should keep us from danger, right? But if our lives are already sufficiently sheltered, well, then do they extend their mandate toward guiding us morally or intellectually? If we are prone to foolishness, then do our angels try raising the alarm before the event? And if we persist and find ourselves with a problem, then do they help with the damage control? But if we're relatively of sound judgment, then is the angelic task more along the positive lines of opening up new venues for understanding? I think that is what I experienced here with this. I've noticed that angels like to work in riddles. Yeah, there are instances where an angel will simply come and directly flat out tell me something, but then it's so hard to grasp the implications that it might as well have been a riddle. So the impression I get is they don't just give out the answers. That is why they like to work in riddles. That is, asking those puzzling questions, giving nothing directly, but only planting seeds, not giving knowledge, but arranging so that it should grow. Not more than just a few years ago, an angel came to me with one of those riddles. Why is it that the only religious garb Our Lady ever wears is that of a Carmelite nun? He was referring to Our Lady of Mount Carmel, who has made repeated apparitions throughout her history wearing that particular habit. Ordinarily, Our Lady appears in fashionable clothes of her own style, but suitable for each particular occasion. She obviously treats elegance as an important factor in her considerations, and the Queen of Heaven doesn't need to keep any vows of poverty. So it is a bit curious that she should ever choose to dress in the plain clothes of a nun. And then, when she does, it is only as a Carmelite. And it became my task to figure out why. First, I did some research. I had been brought into the Catholic Church by the Carmelite Order. The clerics of my first parish church were all Carmelites, and my godmother was a tertiary order Carmelite, third order, a kind of a secular nun. So I already knew something about the Carmelites as though by osmosis. One particular tradition of theirs is uniquely intriguing, that of the Brown Scapular. It presents a kind of a loophole in the ordinary Christian procedures of salvation. I myself acquired a Brown Scapular before I was even officially all the way a Catholic. There are no restrictions and anybody can pick one up. But, well, the commercial ones you find are mostly cheap and flimsy, and so I bought a few of the best I could find and got some brown wool yarn, and with a sewing kit, the only thing I have left from my mother, besides her good looks, God bless her, and I sewed together the couple of scapulars over a hand-braided cord to make a single brown scapular sturdy enough that you could use it to strangle a horse if you wanted to. Priests gasp and wonder when they see this thing. They've never seen one that heavy-duty before. And look, hell, yeah, it's right here. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, and here's it's called a Miraculous Medal. I bought this from my godmother. It's on the first day I decided to become a Catholic. My first words to her were, how do you become a Catholic? And she told me, she said, first you buy a gold medal. No, she didn't say that. No, she was instrumental. She's my godmother. Oh, perhaps we could use a bit more detail about the Brown Scapular, which really brings up the story of the Carmelites themselves, since the two stories can hardly be disentangled. It seems that 1,000 years ago, when Christendom rallied its knights to protect the Holy Land from the first waves of the barbarian invasions coming from off the Eurasian eastern steppes, as much protecting Islamic civilization as Christendom itself, well, many good Frankishmen found themselves far away from home. A certain few crusaders, being from a land where every church was called an Our Lady, a Notre Dame of this or a Notre Dame of that, well, they had been surprised to find a Marian devotion already in place when they arrived at the Holy Land. It was under the charge of a local religious order of monks that called themselves the Carmelites, named after their main monastery situated on the slopes of old Mount Carmel. The Crusaders had been shown a shrine in the Mount Carmel complex, which even back then had been more than 1,000 years old. That shrine had once been Our Lady's cottage when she had come to Mount Carmel seeking refuge during one of the earliest persecutions. Some of the Crusaders were so impressed by this Marian devotion that they joined the order and became Carmelites themselves. But later, when they returned to Europe, they ran into the problem of their local bishops questioning their affiliation in what was not then a recognized Catholic religious order. So petitions were forwarded to the Pope asking for approval of the new brotherhood, but the paperwork dragged on slowly. The leader of the Carmelites' petition drive, Simon Stock, was imprisoned for safekeeping, probably so he could not drum up any new support for the Carmelites before anybody could be certain whether or not the order would be ratified. Apparently being incarcerated, probably in some dark, damp dungeon somewhere, well, it was very demoralizing for him, and so in order to console him, Our Lady came to him as an apparition. Strikingly, she was wearing Carmelite garb. As a special token of her regard, she presented him with the first brown scapular, saying, "Those who die wearing the brown scapular will never know the fires of hell." And went on to say that on the first Saturday of each month, she would personally fetch from out of purgatory all those found wearing a brown scapular. I can only guess that Our Lady has always been a bit uncomfortable with the general doctrines of Christian salvation. These doctrines posit the necessity for murdering her son, and then having everybody agree as a matter of faith that it was both a good and necessary thing that he had to be murdered. Then how disturbing it must be for her that they positively celebrate her son's murder on Easter. Wouldn't you think they'd be able to find a fitter theme for a spring festival? But yes, Our Lady presented a brown scapular that could save without being rooted in murder, blood, and misery. And the devotion of the Brown Scapular was both sentimentally idealistic and practical at the same time. You know, it's the brown doesn't show dirt. Or almost doesn't. Well, right after creating the first Brown Scapular, Our Lady transported herself hundreds of miles away, appearing on the same evening to the Pope in Rome, telling him, "If you will not be the Pope who gives approval to the Carmelite Order, then the next Pope soon shall be." Well, as we all know, popes after their appointments serve for life and are only replaced by new popes for being dead. And so the subtext of what Mary, Mother of God, was saying was probably not lost on him. So of course, the Pope immediately did the right thing and granted official recognition to the Carmelites. That is how the order was accepted into the Catholic Church. But really, our understanding of the history of the Carmelite Order should go back to its true beginnings, back to the times of the prophet Elijah. And on to part 2, which will debut soon. It's this. Thank you, everybody. See you soon.